Hey everybody, Keith Dotson here. I was recently invited to speak about photography to an alumni group at MTSU. That's Middle Tennessee State University. The organizers asked me to offer edutainment, some education but mostly entertainment that might interest or inspire about 50 people who are not necessarily photography enthusiasts. Since this was a general interest audience, not a group of keen photographers, I tailored my message to focus on the history and concentrated it on places that I found within the state of Tennessee. There's a bit about myself, my background, and my gear at the beginning, so if you want to skip that, you can use the time codes. One more note before we start. For a speech like this, I prepare thoroughly. I worked on this presentation for 3 months and made hundreds of speaker's notes. But on presentation day, I recited the histories from memory, and I may have misspoken some of the dates or the details. Please excuse me if that's the case. Okay, here we go. Thank you all very much. It's nice to see you. I'd be lying if I didn't say I was extremely nervous right now, so please ignore my knees if they start knocking. I'm normally on a back road or in the woods or something like that. I don't know if we'll cover all that she just said, but I'll try to cover as much as I can. I've got a lot of material in a short amount of time, and I want to encourage you to please ask questions at any time. I know we'll have a question and answer at the end, but if you have a question right at the moment, shout it out and I'll try to answer it if I can. We'll be ready in just a second.
Do you shoot in RAW?
I do shoot in RAW. Actually, that's a good question. Thank you for asking that question. Do we have very many avid photographers in here? People who really, 1, 2, Andy. Do you shoot in RAW?
Yeah. No, I don't. I don't have the software to.
I understand. Yeah. Right. Good. All right. Thank you.
What does that mean?
Please define that. I know.
The question was, do I shoot in RAW? That doesn't mean do I shoot without clothes on. What it means, although I might, I'm not going to say yes or no. What it means is when you're using a digital camera, you can take a photograph that's just a JPEG. It comes out of the camera as a JPEG. The camera has already processed it for you. You can also shoot a file that's known as a RAW file, which is a kind of software developed by that camera company, and it's kind of a digital negative. It's sort of a neutral version of the photograph you just shot. So the JPEG, the colors will already be saturated, they'll already be sharpened for you. You may or may not like the results, but that's what it does. The RAW file, you have complete control. So you can take it into Photoshop or a lot of other programs that are designed to edit RAW files, and you can do so many tweaks. So ultimately, most people think it's preferred to use RAW, even if you also want to have a JPEG at the same time, which is possible. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you for that. All right, let's see if this works. Very good. Welcome very much. I'm Keith Dotson. I'm a professional fine art photographer. What I mean by that is I do not shoot weddings. I do not take portraits. I do not do commercial work. My photographs are designed to hang on the wall in a frame or similar uses. My business, because it is a business for me, is based on hope. I take a picture and I hope someone buys it, you know. So I have a website, keithdotson.com. Got a little QR code if anybody wants to snap that real quick, but otherwise you can look me up later. And I think it's also in the handout you receive, if I'm not mistaken. I'm also on Instagram, of course. Please ask questions at any time. If you prefer to wait to the end, that's great also, but I'm happy to answer anything at any time. Today, and like I said, I have a lot of material, so if I talk too fast, please let me know, but I'm trying to cover as much as I can. I'm going to show you some general work samples because today we're going to talk about Tennessee abandoned places, but I shoot a lot of things, not just abandoned places, and I want to show you some of the other things I also enjoy. Let me go back to that. I'm also going to talk about my background, the camera gear that I use, and then we'll talk about specifically about some abandoned places in Tennessee that I think are really cool and important, and some of the history that I've learned. And some of y'all may know more about some of these places than I do. So if you know anything, or if I'm saying something that you know to be incorrect, please shout out and let me know. First thing I want to do is talk about the importance of printing, because even though we only have 1 or 2 avid photographers in here, everyone in here is a photographer right now. We all have a camera in our pocket. This is a daguerreotype. Daguerreotypes were they were introduced to the public in France in 1839. They were not the first type of photograph in the world, but they were the first commercially viable type of photograph. And once they were introduced, they went crazy. This is a portrait of a man probably taken in the 1850s, maybe the late 1840s. I can tell that by certain characteristics of the way it's framed. This may or may not be the only photograph he ever had taken in his entire life. We don't know. I don't know who he is. I don't know where he lived. I don't know who the photographer was. But I can still look at his face all of these years later. And there are a lot of people who think daguerreotypes are probably the most beautiful type of photograph ever invented, because even though you can see here, it's quite small, there's a humongous amount of resolution in there. And they were extremely toxic to make, they were slow to make, they were very expensive. And as all things, they eventually were evolved into other types of photography, and daguerreotypes went away. But the point of this little sermon is to say that printing your photographs is important, because you take pictures with your phone, but I don't know how you back them up. Eventually, whatever media you have them on is probably going to go away. The digital files are going to go away. Computers crash, but prints will last. And I said I'm a professional fine art photographer, which means I make a lot of prints and I sell prints, and it's maybe my ego. I would like them to outlast me when I'm gone. It's my legacy, the way I see it. And so archival prints are very important to me. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly, but I just wanted to kind of get that out there. It's also just kind of a cool photo, isn't it? Okay, here's some of the work I like to shoot, and I'll go through these fairly quickly. This is from last year, a wooden grain elevator in Montana. Normally I like to shoot on cloudy days, and I'll explain why shortly, but this was a sunny day, but I still think it works. This was shot with a medium format camera. All my photographs are black and white, by the way, if you haven't figured that out by now. I do shoot in color, I shoot raw, then I completely develop a color file till you could actually print from that file. Then I convert it to black and white. And the reason I do that is because, for example, the sky on this day was extremely blue. But if I had printed the sky blue, in my opinion, it would have competed too much with the building. So I lightened the sky manually so that it wouldn't print so dark. And it's almost white now, but it actually helps your eye go to the building, which is what I want you to see. This is another photograph taken in the same region of Montana. An abandoned one-room schoolhouse, a little playground sitting out in the middle of the prairie, and I love this place so much because just how lonesome and evocative is this? And I think about the kids who used to go to school here, and I don't know when the school closed, but it's been a while. Think about the kid. There's always a kid who wants to swing on the swing set and go above the bar, you know? And I think about that kid swinging back and forth, getting higher and higher, and then finally they got above the bar, and for that fraction of a second, they're hanging there in midair, and looking out across that horizon line, and nothing is there. I mean, how wild is that? Except for one little mountain range over here that you might be able to see. It's kind of faded, but it is over there. But that's about it. Found this house in Kansas. I didn't know it at the time, but it's pretty well known in Kansas among photographers. It's called a Marquette house. I happened upon it randomly and just had to take a picture of it. This shows a few characteristics of how I like to shoot abandoned buildings. One is it's a straight-on look, which has been popular with a lot of photographers over the years who do this kind of work. The other thing is I try to make sure the verticals are straight. Sometimes that's a little deceptive because abandoned buildings are not always straight up and down. Sometimes they're wonky, but I also try to make sure that the horizon is level whenever it's appropriate. I also love this because you can look through the front windows and see out the back of the house, which I think is kind of cool. I do take pictures of other things besides abandoned buildings and landscapes. This is a sunflower. As you can see, it's a little past its prime. A little wilted, kind of like I felt outside a minute ago. I love this because it's starting to dry up. The petals are starting to wither, and there's twisting on themselves, and the texture becomes really interesting to me. And I like this kind of thing. So instead of taking a beautiful flower, I take it after it's kind of no longer at its prime. This is a landscape I shot in Virginia last year. This is off Highway 11 in Western Virginia. Since I only do black and white photography, I feel like there has to be drama. Otherwise, it's just going to be flat and it's not going to compete with color photography. So as you can see, this was a stormy day, so we've got the dramatic storm clouds, and we do have some cloud shadows going across the mountain, which I always love seeing cloud shadows in photos. And then of course the trees are silhouetted, and to me it's just it's got that punch that I like to see in photography, especially black and white photography. Staying in Virginia, this is about abandoned houses in Tennessee, but this house is really important in my opinion. It's got an interesting story, so if you don't mind, I'm going to dwell on this for a second. If you've ever been on I-81 in Virginia, going just north of Bristol, going north, about maybe 45 minutes to an hour. You may have seen this house. It's off the side of the interstate, sitting out in the field. It was built in 1842. It's called the Preston Crockett House. There are several other names for it, but that's what I'll call it. It was built to be a tavern and an inn. It was built to replace an older log cabin tavern that was there previously. So for 22 years, it served as a tavern and an inn. In 1864, a man named John Preston got it, and him and his bride moved in there. And they were in there for a few months. You may realize 1864 was during the Civil War. The house was commandeered by a Union general. Later on, it was sacked by Union troops. Later on in its existence, an author named Lucy Crockett, who was in the same family, I believe, lived in it from like 1940s to the time she died in 2006, I believe it was, or 2002. It's been vacant ever since. What's really weird about this house is that the log cabin version of the tavern had kind of a sketchy reputation. It was on the Wilderness Road at the time, and the innkeeper was known to be a little nefarious. It was suspected he was robbing, unsuspecting travelers, things like that. And there were also some travelers who came to stay and nobody ever saw them again, so he was suspected of maybe even worse. As it turns out, in the 1890s, they were doing a survey of the property or something, and they came across a cave with 21 bodies in it from his era. So that's pretty wild. Unfortunately, this house, which you can see is in rough shape, but it still looks pretty good. The property's been purchased, and it looks like it might be demolished to put up a truck stop. They got the permit from the county, whoever, in 2022, and it hasn't happened yet. So my hope is that they're trying to figure something out with it, but my suspicion is it won't be around much longer, which is a real shame, and why I do this kind of photography. This is very close by also. This is the Campbell House. I cropped this one to a panorama to give it a little more drama. This house sits on a hill. It looks like it's all by itself, but it's actually surrounded by a subdivision. So we had to drive by in a car and with a telephoto shoot between houses, around power lines, over treetops to get this shot. But I also still like the drama of the sky. I like the barren trees in wintertime because I love to be able to see the bone structure of the trees. And I just think it's a beautiful house. I'm not sure how the fire happened, but unfortunately it's in bad shape, as you can see. I shot this tree in Salem, Massachusetts in a deep fog, and one of the things about photography, whether it's abandoned buildings, whether it's landscapes or whatever, simplicity makes a stronger picture, and fog is our friend, which is why so many photographers love fog. You can see here that the sun was kind of shining through the fog a little bit and really made some drama, and I don't know how well you can see it, but there is some detail in the tree trunk here, and I really like this a lot. Another similar photograph taken on the Cumberland Plateau. Sun rising. Normally we don't take a picture of the sun, but I thought here it really kind of helped. I also like to shoot abstracts, especially natural abstracts. This is some ice patterns in a pond in Mississippi, of all places. We had a cold snap that came that far south, and I shot this literally holding my camera like this from the edge of the pond, and thought it was kind of interesting. I got several more similar to this, different compositions. Now, when I do something like this, I'm looking for how does it make your eye flow through the composition, how do the darks and lights help you look at different things, and also how much sharp is it, because I want it to be sharp all the way to the edges. This is Haystack Rock in Cannon Beach, Oregon. Shot this right before sunrise, so the sun would have been behind me. Had my camera on a tripod with a 6-stop ND filter, which slowed down the exposure quite a bit and allowed the surf and everything to blur. A couple more minutes after this, the sun rose and the entire thing was in sunlight. This is Old Car City, USA. Does anybody know about this place? Yeah? It's really cool, isn't it? It's a junkyard in Georgia that has now been opened for photographers. You can pay to go in and spend all day in there and take pictures of rusty old stuff, which is just something I love. I like this shot because the dark and the light have such a nice contrast, and I think when I mentioned simplicity, I think this one's a little simpler because the background and the car sort of go into each other, and then the license plate and the chrome really stands out. This is one I call 31 Dead Roses. I never throw away roses when they're dead. I always save them. This is a crop from a bigger photo that's actually vertical. But I love the texture and the contrast of the yellow and the red roses in this. And actually, on this projection, you can't really see, but there's a lot of detail even in the shadows. Of course, I take other things like Nashville landmarks and things like that help with the business. When Nashville started to boom, it was my good fortune that I had just happened to be taking a lot of pictures of Nashville. So I've got pictures in all the hotels, restaurants, all the time. People want to buy basically the same photos over and over. And one year I was really flattered because one of the Nashville Chancery judges outfitted her entire chambers with my photographs, and that was really awesome to have happen. This is an old school in Cedarville, New Mexico, sitting out in the desert. I shot this through a window, and what was interesting to me is this right here. I've never seen chairs on a rail like that before. Also, on the chalkboard in the back, you can't read it. I had to go in the high resolution file really close up on the computer, but that's German, and I'm not sure if a German tourist went in there and wrote that, or if it was a part of a lesson from long ago, but I thought it was kind of interesting. North Carolina, cloud inversion up in the mountains. This is a thing I came upon in Georgia, and this just makes me so happy when I see stuff like this. Of course, it's an abandoned garage, and the owner put the car there to make it photogenic. It's probably been taken a million times, but I just thought this was so cool. And I like all the texture in this. The light, I thought really worked, and the sign has multiple names on it that are all kind of coming through each other, which I always enjoy. But the one you can read is Collins, SERSTA, so Collins Service Station. A waterfall over at Lost Cove near Sparta. A leaf skeleton. This was something I did quite a bit for a while. I would every time I go hiking, I would just walk looking at the ground. Leaf skeletons are extremely difficult to find in good shape like this. It's almost 100% skeleton, but not quite. To shoot this, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but there's a little trick involved. So it's just a leaf laying on a black piece of cardboard. But when you use a macro lens to get this close to something, if you focus here, the other part a little bit further back, even though it's not very far, it goes out of focus, just because of the way optics work. So I had to use a trick called focus stacking. You know what this is, sir? Focus stacking is when you take multiple images of the same thing, focusing on different parts of it. So I focused here on this edge, focused on this part, focused on the leaf here, and also on the background card. So maybe 4 or 5 images. Then with Photoshop, the magic of digital stuff, it can merge those all together, keeping only the focus parts. And so you have a photo that's focused from front to back. It's kind of a pain, but it does really help sometimes. Otherwise, parts of this would be out of focus, and I think it would be unappealing. This is a ghost town in Union Level, Virginia. I did a video on Union Level a number of years ago. Walked down the Union Level, if you haven't heard about it, is out in the country. It's a small town. There are about 8 or 10 buildings all in a row along this highway, and they're all abandoned and all in really bad shape. Well, I put the video out, discussed the history that I was able to research about each building, and then a couple years later I heard from an owner of a couple of buildings whose descendants actually owned and operated them back in the day, and he had grown up there, so he invited me to come back and let him give me the whole history from his point of view. And that was so fascinating. But when I went back, I shot this through the window of one of the buildings. It was the Bank of Union Level. Went out of business in the Great Depression in the 1930s, and then probably wound up as a store. And at the end of its life, you can see it was basically apartments, I guess, or something. And when it was vacated, it just went to rot. Unfortunately, some of the buildings are starting to come down now. They're starting to tear them down, so I feel like I got there just in time. This is Wormslow, Savannah, Georgia, the Avenue of the Oaks, famous scene. I actually shot this in the rain, which made it look so dramatic, but also made it a little soft because the rain sort of made the detail a little less. But this has been one of my most popular photographs ever. I had someone who wanted to buy a humongous print of this, and the print unfortunately won't go that large, so they hired me to go back and reshoot it with a higher resolution camera, and I wound up shooting it in sections and then piecing them all together because they wanted like a 13-foot print. And so that was how I accomplished that. It was a pain too. Just an old tree on a hilltop, the kind of thing I love to see, again, barren branches. Okay, let me go quickly through my background. My first ever photo exhibition was in Minneapolis in 2009. The theme was trees, and as you can see, it was just a whole bunch of pictures of trees on the wall. My last exhibition was in 2023 at Longview House in New Orleans. I was invited to come down and be part of an exhibition. It was a great excuse to go to New Orleans. I don't work with a lot of galleries. Mostly I just do this on my own through my own website. But I do like to have exhibitions once in a while whenever I can. In 2023, a great client of mine in Milwaukee, a law firm, bought a whole bunch of my photographs and framed them and put them into their new space in a historic building in Milwaukee. Then he decided to host me there as a guest of honor during an art walk. It was so exciting and thrilling. We got to go to Milwaukee and dress up, but I'm a very shy person. and I didn't want to talk to anyone. There was a crowd, and I heard people literally walking past me going, has anyone seen the artist? And I did not say a word. But I had Tina there with me, and she's my representative, so she did the talking for me while I hid. I've had my work on books, even though I don't sell my work commercially, on purpose. Sometimes people do hire it for whatever, and these were 2 Spanish book covers where they used, you may recognize this sunflower and also a leaf photograph. It's also been in things like textbooks. It was an architectural textbook. Probably the honor of my life was having Ken Burns ask me to have 2 photographs in his photo book that came out a few years ago, Our America. It's mostly historical photos from the United States, but there were a few photos from modern photographers at the back of the book, and I was one of the ones chosen. I had 2-page spread. They told me I was the only photographer to have 2 pages, so I was really honored. The notorious Sally Mann only had 1 page, I'm just saying. That's her picture of the Windsor Ruins down in Mississippi, which I've also photographed, but hers is pretty good. I do like it. This photograph was shot in Murfreesboro in 2014 out at the battlefield on raindrops on one of the rose canes. The other photo in my spread was in Wisconsin in 2008. I've also had photos in a lot of things, movies, TV shows, Grey's Anatomy. I'm on the set of Grey's Anatomy for a number of years. The first 3 seasons on there, I never saw them. If they were there, they were basically a blur. She walked through the bedroom or whatever. Finally, in one season, 4 or 5, they had this weird plot twist where she needed to talk about her wallpaper, and there they were. And I was like, oh, finally evidence. I've also had photographs in movies, and I'm showing you these 2. Sorry, it's a little low res, but these 2 photographs were used in a movie called Why Him that came out in 2016. It starred Bryan Cranston and Cedric the Entertainer and some other folks, James Franco. Ooh, that's really low res, sorry. Here's a screenshot from the movie, and there they are over there. I know they're hard to see, but that's them. And there they are. But even weirder than this, when I was 11 years old, I used to listen to a band called Kiss. You may have heard of them. My 11-year-old self liked Kiss. Well, imagine my shock and surprise when I was watching the movie, and there's Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley with my photos in the same movie. And my 11-year-old brain collided with my adult brain going, what happened? So you can never make this up. But even weirder than that was last year I was invited to be in a TV show for UK and Australian audiences. I was asked to come to Mississippi to shoot Abandoned Places with this guy, Griff Rhys-Jones. He's apparently pretty well known in England and Australia. I'd never heard of him. He's a member of the Order of the British Empire. Super nice guy. He travels around. Apparently, he does travel shows. He's been to other countries doing this, and he did one across the American South. He wears that red jacket everywhere. We shot this show episode in November, but it was still hot, still mosquito-y. He had that coat on the entire time. So it was really strange for me because, as I said, I spend most of my time out in the country by myself or with Tina. This looks like I'm bawling them out. I'm not. I'm explaining some history. But it was weird having cameras following me around and trying to pretend like I was doing stuff. It was very strange. But out of all this, it still comes around to prints for me. We can go back to the importance of prints again. And I do have a print on display over here you're welcome to look at. Sorry, I don't have more. But that's a silver gelatin print. It's hot off the presses. I just shot that last month at Twin Arrows in Arizona. That's on Route 66. Used to be 2 arrows. Now there's only 1 because the other one fell down a long time ago. But I think it's a good representation of what I like to do. When it comes to printing, and I hope you can see this, that, like I said, is a silver gelatin. It's a darkroom print, but these are all inkjet prints. There's a variety of papers and things you can do with digital printing these days. But depending on what you decide to do, you have textured watercolor paper, you have glossy paper, you have uncoated paper, you have bright white paper which has chemicals in it to make it whiter that may be unstable over time. And some of them are a little warmer, but they have no chemicals in them to make them whiter. These are all things you have to learn and make decisions when you're producing your work. I'm going to go quickly through my gear because I'm a photographer and we all love our cameras. So I make very large prints sometimes. As I said, that one was 13 feet. So I have high resolution cameras. This is a 61 megapixel camera. Even though it's 7 years old, I think it's still one of the highest resolution cameras on the market. I have a medium format Fujifilm camera. It's 100 megapixels. That helps me make 60 by 80 inch prints very easily. I have an old Hasselblad from the 1970s that I often use, and I love this thing most of all because of the click of the shutter. This is a 6 by 9 Fuji camera, and that means it makes a negative that's 6 centimeters by 9 centimeters. It's the biggest negative you can make with a camera outside of large format. So from here, you're going to like a box camera. And I have assorted other cameras that I also like to use. I said I make large prints. I'm going to show you a few examples. This is obviously some tree fungus that I shot on a fallen log, and this is a 30 by 45 inch print to show you how it looks large. Coincidentally, I just shipped a print of this yesterday to Abu Dhabi. That's a 40 by 60 inch print, but this is a little deceptive because it's 40 by 60 inches, quite large, but the perspective on this makes it look a little smaller, but that's how big the prints can be sometimes, and it's razor sharp, which I really love. This is a 5 by 7 print, and I was inspecting it because I have to have these large prints made out of the lab, and they're not always flawless when they come back. This paper is very easy to bend when you're handling it. It leaves a permanent crimp in the paper, wrinkles, other things, so I have to check them very carefully before I package them and send them to clients. Here's another one that I did for a corporate headquarters in Dallas-Fort Worth, very large, and this was a single photograph that they wanted cut in half and printed as two, so I mean, it was not enough resolution, unfortunately, but it looks pretty good from a distance. Another view of it. Another one from a different office, and a lot of reflections, unfortunately. And this one was a single image cut into 4. So, yeah. All right, now we're finally to our topic at hand, abandoned places in Tennessee. What I want to do first is run you through just some individual photos, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty with some histories, if that's okay. This is an old general store I found somewhere, I don't even remember where, but I want to emphasize again a few things about this. The verticals are straight. There's ways to do this because when you take a picture, if you've ever taken a picture of a house or a building, you may notice sometimes they look like they're going like this or various things. You can straighten them out with software, or you can use a special tilt shift lens to make them that way in camera. I do this with Photoshop to straighten that all out. I like the horizontal lines and all the woodwork, but I also like the light here, and I want to emphasize the importance of light. You know, photography is all about light. And if you're shooting in color, disregard everything I'm about to say. But if you're ending with black and white, I like cloudy days or days with soft filtered sunlight. The reason being, all this detail you can see right here. When you have harsh black shadows, it just makes everything harder to see. The photograph becomes more about the shadows than the actual thing you're taking a picture of. So you can see we have high filtered cirrus clouds there that give you a really nice sort of a softbox effect, and I like that. This is the old barn up on Broad. As you probably have seen it driving to Smyrna or getting on 840. It looks like it's on its last legs, but I managed to get this shot of it, and I think it's really cool with the shingles going along the eaves there. Shot this inside a house over at Seven Islands Park in Knoxville. Inside the house with a tripod. I like to shoot around f14, and on your handout I put a guide to aperture settings. Probably won't mean anything to you if you're not interested in photography, but the tighter, smaller your aperture, the less light you're letting in a place like this where there's only a little bit of light coming in from a door or something from the side. You don't have enough light for f14, so you have to be on a tripod. The reason for f14 is it gives you more sharpness from front to back. But you can see here, I was so close to this door, maybe a foot away, that even so, it still fades out of focus quickly. That's called depth of field. This is an old school down near Lewisburg. Again, demonstrates what I like about cloudy days and soft light. You can see a lot of detail even up under the eaves here. If this had been a sunny day, you might have this entire thing trying to go black. You would have a lot of shadows of trees on the grass and everything, but this shot, you can see the building. An old house, the same thing. Beautiful light. I love the barren tree sort of directing your eye back to the house. I love all the texture of the different lines inside the house itself. There's a guy in Tracy City who has a yard full of a bunch of rusty old things, steam shovels, all kind of stuff. He's got a fence with all kinds of no trespassing signs, but you can shoot easily from the road, and that's where I found this. This is an old mail truck. It's got a civil defense logo on the door, so I'm assuming it's probably from the 60s maybe, I'm not sure, but I like the light here as well. This is a little bit soft, but I found this along I-40 at a gas station stop, and I just thought it was really cool and evocative, like something out of a zombie movie with all the ivy growing.
There is a phone in there.
I doubt if there's a phone in there. There may be a phone booth. This is the Bank of Centertown, built 1919. Again, straightened verticals, horizontal lines, sitting just wide open to the elements. This old truck I found out near Sparta on a back road. Someone had driven it into a ditch and left it there. When I first found it, I don't know how long it had been there. It looked like it had been there a long time. But after that, I went back over subsequent years and checked on it, and it was still there all these different times. Finally, and often I like to shoot things from various angles, various viewpoints. So here's a few more shots of it. An up close look at the hood with the word Ford on it. Finally, after about 10 years, I went back to check on it. It was gone. And as I was driving down the road, the main road there, through one of the small towns up there near Sparta, I saw it sitting in the parking lot of a gas station. So someone had towed it out and just left it there. Shot this over at the garage over at Cannonsburg where they keep all the old tractors and everything. Underneath the eave, they've got a bunch of rusty things, and this falls under my abstraction category. I love this because I want it to look like it's three-dimensional, like things are coming out at you. Again, this is another example where you're using a macro lens so close that you have to focus on various parts. You can see this is out of focus here. But I focused here, and I focused on there and back, and maybe 6 different shots to get this entirely in focus. But I like it because it feels sculptural. And here's another example as well from the same place. And again, I'm trying to, when I set the camera up, I'm trying to figure out how are these lines and these different whites and grays and blacks going to lead your eye through the picture. This is a famous barn amongst people like me who like to shoot pictures like this out in Williamsport. It used to have another building attached to it, which was a blacksmith shop. And I don't know when it was taken off, but this is what remains. And I just think it's really cool. You can see the steps going up into it and everything. And it's just sitting on open field, easy to shoot from the road. And last but not least, in this grouping, this is here in Murfreesboro, not too far out of town. There's an old farmhouse, very small, sitting right on the side of the road with this old Bose & Sons piano on the front porch. I had never heard of this company, but I looked them up. It's made in Boston. The company was founded, I think, in the 1860s. They established in Boston because at that time, Boston had a lot of old world craftsmen who could do woodworking and piano, you know, all this stuff. So they had the right skill set there to build pianos. I researched this piano online and using some clues like the legs, you know, there's not a lot left as you can see, but I was able to determine this probably was made or sold around 1895 or 1896. So I love to think about this little house with this piano and people inside entertaining themselves or maybe singing hymns or who knows, you know. But I just think that's such a connection to the past that you can just randomly find along the side of a road. And I just think that's really cool. All right, now we're going to talk about some more in-depth examples. And am I doing okay on time? Is everybody, I'm hoping I'm not boring everyone to death. Doing good? All right, first place we're going to look at is the Wheland Foundry down in Chattanooga. I'm sure everyone's seen this from I-24. I looked at this for a decade and never went to try to take a photo of it, but I always wanted to. Finally, last year, Tina and I went down. We found a road that goes around behind it, and you can actually shoot it from back there. This is all parts of it. As you can see, it's looking pretty rough. There is a fence, but there's also a hike and bike trail that runs right along this fence, so you can get pretty good shots from the hike and bike trail, and that's what we were doing. You can see the highway back here, trucks going by. I've been fascinated by this place for so long, and I really wanted to shoot the other side, but there was no way around there. Well, Tina was over at the fence taking some pictures, and the security guard came up, who was an off-duty police officer, and he said, "Do you want to come inside?" I don't think he knew I was there because I was elsewhere taking pictures. So she came and got me, and we both went in. And so he escorted us around and let us go inside, which is completely off limits. Now, the thing about this place is it's been set for demolition for a long time. They approved it, I think, years ago. They're going to build a stadium over there and some other things. So I think I might be the last photographer to ever go inside and shoot it, which is pretty cool. That's the powerhouse. I think they're going to keep that building. This is just some random photos around. I'll show you inside of it. I did hear from some people who worked here. It was a foundry, and they made auto parts and brake, I think, things for wheels and various things like that for Detroit. During World War II, they made parts to support the military. It was built in the 1930s, although the company was established in the 1870s and went out of business in, I think, 2002, laid off 400 people, but there were thousands of people working there once upon a time. You have to be careful inside these places. Don't ever want to sneak in at night, especially because there are holes in the floor and things like that where you can hurt yourself. There's one that goes down into the floor. It wasn't very deep, but it's enough to really hurt yourself. And you can see the graffiti artists have already been there long before I was. Just some random photos of the inside. Tina was able to go all around the back and shoot some other various parts that I didn't get to see because I was with the officer. It's really interesting for me to see all these different aspects of this where people used to work. And now the photographs I took. And I'm trying to make these emblematic of the entire building, you know, as you can imagine. Pipes laying on the ground. We had great light that day too. In fact, it started to rain on us before we left. Down the street from that is the U.S. Pipe, Hydrant, and Valve Company, I think it was. Literally about a block down. This company actually owned the Foundry down that I just showed you for a while. This company closed in 2006 and has been abandoned since then. And as you can see from the wall coverings or the window coverings, they had a fire at some point and melted all this. But that's the inside. There's the window coverings, the way they look. It's kind of strange looking to me, but I was fascinated by it. So it's a few photos of this. We were able to shoot all of this from outside looking in through the windows. Next, we're going to talk about Old Jefferson. Does anybody know about Old Jefferson? A few people? If I say anything incorrect, please fix it. So Old Jefferson is a place that is up near Smyrna at the confluence of the west and east fork of the Stones River. It was established in like 1803, I think it was. They started making out plots. They were going to build a town. They sold some plots to people. They started building houses, building businesses. Eventually it became the first county seat of Rutherford County. When they first established it, it was still in Davidson County. There was a movement at hand to take parts of Davidson and parts of Williamson County and make Rutherford County, which they did. So this Old Jefferson became the first county seat. But as you can imagine, it's pretty far north. People way down south in Rutherford County didn't like having to go up there to take care of business, so eventually it was moved to Murfreesboro, which left this town kind of out in the cold. But there was still a town there and a lot of farmers and people living there. Fast forward to the 30s when the government decided to build a dam, and they thought this entire area was going to go underwater. They were building Percy Priest Dam. They knew it was going to build a lake and it was going to flood this entire area. So they basically bought people's property, forced them off. A lot of homes were demolished, some were moved, but the ones that were demolished were basically plowed. There's some stories out there that they were burned and things like that. They were bulldozed is what happened, and everyone was removed. Well, guess what? When the waters came, they went into cave systems and did not flood at all. So what you have is basically the same amount of ground you had before. Now, for years, people thought it was actually underwater, apparently. Everyone thought it was gone, like as they had predicted it would be. But a few years ago, some people from the Cherokee tribe were doing a Trail of Tears exploration, and they followed a path out through there and discovered the Trail of Tears road that people used when it was still Jefferson, and realized it wasn't underwater at all. So now you can hike out there. I don't have a lot of great photographs of anything to show you because there's nothing there but a lot of debris. But I think it's still one of the really interesting abandoned places. So this is a map that I made based on that other one. This is the former roads, right here, the white line. This was the actual town area right here, although it went out all into here. That was the main town area. This is the hiking trail that you can take in. And once you get over to here, or really anywhere, you can walk into the trees and explore all kinds of things. Just for your reference, this is sort of outside of Smyrna. The East Fork boat ramp is right there, and that's where you can park your car. From there, you can walk kind of a little ways over. It's out of focus, but this is a water treatment plant on the Stones River there. It's a little bit enlarged. This is an old map that I found that shows some of the families who were out there, the names of the families: Allen, Reed, Buck, Wade, Waller, Lenoir, Robinson, Mitchell, Ridley, Sanders. A lot of people lived out there. This is what it looks like walking into the woods there. They keep it mowed because of the Trail of Tears. They sort of keep it mowed. It's not always mowed. It's really a horse trail. If you go walking out there, you might want to wear some tall boots. That's what I would do. There are some open areas out there, but it's mostly woods. As you walk kind of down some of the roads getting to the homesteads, you can start to see telltale signs that people live there. There's still some barbed wire coiled up along the road or whatever. This is a piece of chrome from somebody's car, probably from the 60s. I'd failed to say that this all happened in the 1960s when everyone had to move out. They had to leave the area. The area was, the lake came. So that's the last time people lived out here was the 1960s. But you can still see some things like bricks and concrete from columns and foundations that were out there. This is a big pile. I guess the Army Corps of Engineers probably bulldozed it all up into a pile. Who knows what's inside of there? But all around this are bottles and artifacts, light bulbs, shoes, all kinds of things out there that you can find. This is a tricycle that we pulled up out of the mud last time we were out there. Tina found it, and it's just a rusty old tricycle from who knows when, but it's kind of gives you that feeling people lived out here, It's kind of like going on a treasure hunt out there. You can't bring anything off. I know there are a lot of bottle collectors and things like that who like to go out, and they do have some pretty cool bottles out there, but you're not supposed to bring them out, and we didn't. I kind of dated these old cans of Simon Eyes to the 1950s. That's a Purex bottle, bleach from the 1940s, and I know that because of the stipple pattern on the bottle. No light bulb. This is a photo I took of the road going out there. Now, this would have been the road that cars would have driven on. It's blocked off now, but I love how eerie that looks with grass growing through and everything else. The trees are slowly closing in. Here's another area on the road. Found this rather, yeah. Now, there was I don't know if it's a county park or a city park out there. It's been abandoned as well. It's no longer being maintained. So as you're walking toward Old Jefferson, you also see stuff like this out there. There are some of these picnic tables that are like trees have fallen on and broken them in half and things like that, but it's just completely abandoned. And this is the Stones River early in the morning with some fog drifting off, which I thought was eerie and sort of fit the mood of being out there, in my opinion. Now we're going to go to Adams, Tennessee, which I know everybody knows about Adams, home of the Bell Witch, but the things we're going to look at were well after that time. We're going to be in downtown Adams. And the thing about Adams is that it was a bustling little downtown area until two things happened. One is the railroad stopped coming. And the second thing is in 1976, I-24 bypassed the town. This is the old Methodist church. It was built prior to 1870 and relocated here in 1870. These photos were several years ago. It's really gone downhill since then. I shot this one last year, and as you can see, the ivy's completely taken over. The doors are open a little bit, and the roof is completely caved in, so this building won't be around much longer, which is a shame. I did hear from somebody who told me they were married there in the 1980s, so it was still active at least as late as the 1980s. Across the street is the J.E. Winters Company dry goods store, built in 1897. It's got a little Mason sign up there with a date on it. Would have been, of course, I think it was more or less a hardware store for a while and then dry goods. Another view of it with ivy all down the side. This is the front door of the J.E. Winters store. The bottom panel of the door had these really interesting, like the had a little rosette thing in the middle with sunbeams going out from it. Unfortunately, those have now been stolen or they're gone. I don't know what happened to them over the years that's happened. Down the street from there is this little collection of buildings. These three buildings were constructed in 1912 to 1914. They were built by two guys named Robertson and Shug or Sugg, S-U-G-G. I'm not sure exactly how you say that, but this was a general store or hardware store. This was a pharmacy and a drugstore, and on the end was a post office. I shot this also several years ago, and as you can see, there's still an awning there somewhat and everything. Close-up look at the ghost sign above. Look at the awning. That's the post office. I shot this last year as well. I've been back here several times, and now you can see the awnings are all gone. The buildings have degraded quite a bit. The door was standing wide open, leaving it open to vandals or the elements or whatever. So again, I'm afraid these probably aren't going to be around much longer either. which is also a shame. Reliance, Tennessee. This is out in East Tennessee. There's a historic district out there, but this is the Hiwassee Meeting Hall, built in 1897. It was interesting because it was built with a partnership between the local Hiwassee church and the Masons. And so the first floor was the church, the second floor was the Mason Hall, and the church was doubled as a school during the week. When I shoot these kind of things, again, you'll see I'm shooting, this is just a color photo to give you an idea of what it looks like there. The Hiwassee River in the back. Foundation sitting way up high on those stones. That's how I usually shoot these. Camera on a tripod, and this orange thing right here is called an L bracket, and that just helps you turn your camera sideways or back to level again very quickly and easily. Another view of it. Black and white photo of the same thing now. Again, I try to shoot from every angle to get the best one so I have what I need when I leave. This hotel was built in the 1880s. This is just right across the river from what we just looked at. At the time, they were starting to build a railroad, and this man built a hotel in anticipation of a lot of people coming, which they did, thanks to the railroad. Later on, in the 1890s and 1900s, people started coming there as like a resort area, and they stayed in the hotel. And then even later than that, maybe in the early 1900s, a logging camp was further up in the mountains, and it created some traffic and some business for the hotel. The man who built it, I believe his name was Higdon. His family lives in the hotel as well. It's still there. It's abandoned and empty, but it's in pretty good shape. Now, I didn't get a picture of it, but down the street from this, there's a little building, a little house that was built for the railroad observer, whose job was to keep an eye on the railroad bridge and let somebody know if the trains came over and sparked a fire on the bridge. And that was his job. And I love this. His name was Mr. Pickle. That's just a shot I took on the way out there. Always love some fog. Now we're going to talk about the Hamilton Lay General Store. This is out in Union County. This store is still owned by the Lay family. It was a couple of dates on this building. They say it was built in the 1840s. I'm dubious about that. I did a lot of research. I think it was built in the 1870s, but regardless, it's a really awesome building. And we met the family. David Lay owns it. He's trying to sell it. He wants somebody to keep it up and take care of it, but I don't know if he's had any takers yet. Very nice though, nice guy, and he told us a little bit of the history of it. But in those days, a general store like this would have been a place where you could meet people, you could learn some news. He said it was the only place around that had a telephone for a long time, so you could get phone calls there or messages, things like that. Believe it or not, this dirt road right here in front of it, it's just a driveway now, but it was once the main road that went out to wherever. It's the door on the side, which I think is just really cool. In the windows, shuttered. Down the road from that is a school, Lay's Gap. I don't think there's any relation to the general store, but it's still beautiful, and it's got the Lay name on it. So, shot this from the road. It sits out in the field. I don't have any information about it, but it is a cool building. Hollow Rock, Tennessee, a little bit west of here. This was a railroad town. In the 1880s, a railroad came through. Then they built, some things to accommodate the railroad. Then came some taverns. Then it became kind of a rough and ready place with a lot of fights and, things like that happened. But now, a lot of it's abandoned. I understand, though, that a lot of this may be gone now since I've been over there. Maybe torn down. That's a farmhouse, another view of the same farmhouse. Down in the town, this is the American Legion Post, unfortunately sitting wide open and abandoned, which makes me kind of sad. Think about a community like this that used to have so much life and things even for the veterans to do that are now just empty. You can still see the coat hangers hanging inside the entryway door there. The general store. And right outside of town, an old church, also abandoned. I also like to shoot Polaroids and various other kind of photographs when I'm at these places, and that's what you're seeing here. A lot of people don't know Polaroids are still a thing, but they are. It's a little experimental yet. They're trying to figure out the formula, so these are a little faded. But other versions of the same town. Eli Tillman House. This is actually on a state park. But this little house was built in the 1920s by a man named Eli Tillman and his wife, and they raised 4 daughters in this place, believe it or not. When I first saw it, I thought it was just a barn or a shed. But when you go up and look inside, it's actually a house with stairway up to the second floor and everything. There's a few photos of the inside. I like this shot because of the way the trees look, the unusual point of view, but also that little stream of sky running through the trees. Inside there's a lot of stuff. It looks like maybe the state park people might be just throwing stuff in there right now, but also I think it's been a corn crib, you know, various things like that. There's also some old farm stuff in there. Right across from the house, there's this tree where iron wheels have actually grown into the body of the tree, which I just find to be so intriguing. Like, how long does this take? You know, when did someone lean those up there and forget about them? Now they're like completely absorbing into the tree. Another shot of the house. Okay, now we're going to go to Henry Horton State Park, and this is something I bet a lot of people don't know about. It's right there in the woods at the park, but it's little known. And it's an abandoned farmhouse. I have no information on it. I went there as part of a photography group to shoot abandoned places. We were allowed to go in. At that time, which was about 6 or 7 years ago, it was already in such bad shape the floor wasn't safe, but we were all walking across these rotten boards and everything. But they did close this from access a little bit later than that, so I'm not sure if it's available now or not, but it is still there. I've checked on it. Inside the house, there were some newspapers on the wall. This newspaper dates to roughly 1950. I know that from the headline. It says Truman rebukes MacArthur. Now, people would put newspapers on the walls in old houses like this for various reasons. Some of it was insulation, some of it was wallpaper. It may have been under wallpaper as insulation, but there's also a thing about haints. Do y'all know about haints? Evil spirits. They have a legend about haints, that when the haint comes in your house at night to come and steal your breath or whatever, that if you put something out there to distract them, they won't be able to get to you before morning, and then they have to leave. And newspapers on the wall was one way to do that, because they get hung up reading the news and forget to come in and do mean things to you. Whether that was the case here, I don't know, but it's pretty cool to see those on the wall. During the road there, that's the barn from that same farmhouse, and it had already collapsed by the time I got there. Water Valley, Tennessee, not very far from here. Do y'all know about Water Valley? It made the news a few years ago because the entire town was up for sale. We doing okay?
Yeah, if you want to do Q&A in a minute,
Okay.
minutes, and I've got some microphones.
Awesome. I will do that. I'm going to rush through the rest of this because apparently, yes, sir.
It's exactly like the house where I was born.
Is that right? It's a beautiful house. It's empty, unfortunately. The story with Water Valley is there's several old storefronts there. They advertised it as by the entire town. It created a big stir in the media. There were a lot of headlines. I know that a group of YouTubers said they were going to all gang up with a bunch of money and buy it, but they didn't, I don't think. I don't know if it ever sold. But I'll quickly show you. This is the C.E. Dotson, D-O-D-S-O-N, general store. That's another general store that I think now is being used for storage. These were for sale at the time. Just some various shots. This Frank Dotson, who was obviously related to the other Dotson, that's a 1950s Pepsi sign. I'm going to quickly go through this. This is a store down around Lynchburg. Theoretically, according to Facebook, it was a muster point during the Civil War. Now it's just an abandoned general store next to a cemetery. I'm going to go through these very quickly without really much commentary. I'll try to shoot things like this while I'm there if there's an opportunity, so it's not just about the buildings, it's about whatever comes. This is an abandoned car out at Tim's Ford. You may have seen this if you've ever gone hiking out there. There's a whole story about this, but I won't get into it. I did ask, and they gave me a reason the car's down there. I can't understand why it was never pulled back out. And finally, this is my last one anyways, Beth, so we're almost there. The Trew General Merchandise Store out in Etowah, is that how you say it? Etowah. Do y'all know about this place? It was a general store operated from the 20s to 1996. An old couple ran it the entire time. Mortimer Trew was the owner of the store, him and his wife. It was a family business for a long time. Then he took it over in the 1970s. They had all the things in there you could want for a community like that. You know, nails, fabric, everything. You get whatever you need in there. You know, farm tack. What was really nice about them was they were known for two things. One is giving credit to farmers. So you could go in there and you could have all the credit you need until your crops came in and you could pay them back. Wow. And also they were known for being honest. So the mountain people would come down buy things from them. A lot of them didn't know how to count, but the Trews were known for giving you accurate change back and for not overcharging you. So they had that reputation. And they said that Mrs. Trew would make you a really great bologna sandwich with a slice of tomato from her garden and fresh sliced bologna. I'm going to quickly show you these photos. That's the shot through the viewfinder of my Hasselblad right there. The building is unfortunately being overtaken by vines, even from the inside, and that's what you're seeing there. There's a barn across the street, which looks like that. Probably was their property. And they had a lot of concerns, including sawmill and various things, and this is next door. I'm assuming that might have been a sawmill. It's rather precarious on that hilltop. And that is it. Thank you. Thank you for staying awake. And also thank you for not leaving. Don't make the questions too hard, okay?
Have you ever been to Bon Aqua?
I've been through there. What's over there?
A lot of houses like that.
Is that right?
Used to be a spa, had a train track that went all the way down there. A lot of the houses like that are still.
Very nice. I'll make a note to get back over there. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I grew up in the northeastern part of Rutherford County, and when I was small, 4 or 5 years old, 6, my family and I would go to Nashville. We would go through the community of Old Jefferson.
Oh, very cool.
And then after they built New 41, 4-lane road to Smyrna, we'd come this way.
So you saw it when people were still living there and there were still homes? And...
Yes, but very, very vague memories.
Very cool.
What percentage of your photographs are done with tripod? And how do you decide when to use a tripod and when to just hold your camera?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Up until about a year ago, probably 90% of my photos were taken with a tripod. What changed was last year I bought that Fuji camera that I showed earlier, which has phenomenal stabilization, which means you can hold it practically in the dark and it will freeze your image. So I don't use a tripod quite as much anymore because of that, and I don't like using a tripod because sometimes the difference between the shot you want and the shot you don't want is just barely, just a little bit of inches, and the tripod makes that difficult. So I've been using the Fuji now for a year, and it is so solid with that. I very rarely use a tripod now. I bring it just in case, but and of course you'll need the tripod if you're going to do long exposure, or if you're going to do that thing where you're getting multiple shots for a focus stacking, you still need a tripod for that. Yes, sir.
Is there a lot of thought when you're going to do a road trip, or you just do a road trip?
It's a little bit of both. When I do a road trip, I do figure out where I want to go. Often I'll plan the destinations. I'll do a little research on Google Street View, things like that. But I also like to leave a little room for discovering things. We just came back from New York State just the day before yesterday, which is why I feel a little disorganized right now. But we took some roads we hadn't planned on taking and found all kinds of golden opportunities. So sometimes discovery is your friend, and I really do like leaving a little room for just finding things by accident.
Are you familiar with the old house that used to be Lindell's and formerly the New Orleans Manor at the edge of Nashville Airport property?
I'm familiar with it. I've never been to it.
It's slated to be torn down.
Oh, that's right.
It's a shame because it's a beautiful it's vacant now.
That's a good idea. Thanks for that tip. I do need to go take a picture of that. I'm hoping there's a place to pull over there. The worst thing is when you're on a back road and there's no shoulder, because you can't pull over. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Can you tell us how you got started to get to be a noted photographer, so that people would start searching you out?
Well, thanks for saying that. I don't know how noted I am, but Google is my friend. I've been taking photographs my entire life, but about 20 years ago, I got really into it. I started taking it very seriously. Went to art school and worked as a professional graphic designer for years and years and years, but doing photography on the side. And I established a website probably 10 or 15 years ago, and that's where people find me, through Google. Nowadays, I don't know how, like the Nashville Chancery judge who bought my photos, I don't know how she heard about me. I do now I work with a lot of interior designers, And sometimes they contact me and say, we have a client who asked for you specifically, so we need to buy these photos from you for our client. I don't know. I don't know how they know about me. It's got to be Google, I guess.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Where do we buy your photos?
I have a website, keithdotson.com. You can go there and look at that if you're interested. Thank you for asking that question. I ship them for free anywhere in the United States. Not to Abu Dhabi, that's not free. Very expensive, actually. Yes?
So many of these look like Americana.
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever thought about doing like a coffee table book or something? I mean, seriously,
No.
mean, look, the old cars, the old homes, churches, yeah, it's like Americana.
Yeah, I have had that idea, and I would love to do that. It's hard to find a publisher, so I have self-published a few books, which means they are very expensive to buy, unfortunately. But I do have two. If you want to look at them, I have a couple up here. They're not a coffee table book. Like this one's very thin, but this is the first book I ever did. It's called Unloved and Forgotten Fine Art Photographs of Abandoned Places. It's got some history and various things in here. You can look at that. But this is my 20-year anniversary as a photographer, so I just published this book. That just sort of covers my 20 years and shows some of my favorite photos. But doing this on my own, it's like so expensive to produce these. And people buy them. I just sold that book right there. That 20-year book, if you buy the hard copy, it's $100. And I can't sell it for any less than that. But people are still buying it, which shocks me. I also have digital versions for $7.99, and I have a paperback, which is $40 or $50. So I'm trying to make it easy on people if they really want it, but I admit it's too expensive, but there's no other way right now. I would love to get a publisher to do a big book like you're talking about, and believe me, I've got the photos. I could fill a book this thick, and I love the idea of it. I even thought about doing a version of what you're talking about in volumes, so maybe thin versions that could all go together, and you could buy them on, a little bit at a time or something to make them more affordable, but time is also not on my side sometimes.
Are you 100% digital, or do you still use some film?
I do still use film. I like shooting film for various reasons. One of the reasons I use film is depending on the light. I told you I like using the digital camera when it's cloudy and gloomy. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, film handles harsh light better. So if a lot of times, it's very frustrating to me, you can ask Tina, we'll take off in the morning to go 4 hours somewhere to take a picture. And when we leave, the forecast says cloudy. And 20 minutes before we get there, the sky opens up and it's harsh sun. And, rather than turn around, I take the pictures with film. And, I think they look great on film.
Did you ever shoot down south, like in Elora?
Laura?
Elora?
I don't know about it.
But that's where my father was born. But it's a pretty old town. And there's not a lot of people there, but a lot of buildings.
I would like to look into that. Thank you for telling me that.
Great. Any other questions?
This might not be a good question. Did you use large format cameras?
I never have. I have to admit I'm tempted sometimes to think about it, but they are so tedious. And I'm the kind of person who wants to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. And I don't think I could ever have the patience for it. But the image quality is unparalleled if you ever did that. Yeah. Plus it's like $10 a sheet for film, and yeah, the cameras are not really expensive, but the film and everything is outrageous. And I probably would mess up hundreds of dollars of film before I got it right, Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you in a photography club locally?
I'm not. That's just my personality. I'm not much of a joiner. I wish I was. I'm not very social. I did have I don't speak in public, hardly ever, but I did speak to a photography club in Nashville last year. They invited me to come speak. I was terrified. There were, I think, 7 people in the room, and it was so much fun. I really loved it. At the end, I was glad I did it, but going in, I thought I was gonna have a heart palpitation. So, yeah, I was glad when it was over, and I didn't think I would ever do it again. And then Beth asked me, I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. Well, thank you all very much for your time and your attention.